So the Buffalo Bills are in shambles. We just lost to the Denver Broncos about a week ago in the playoffs. And since then, we have fired head coach Sean McDermott, promoted our GM in Brandon Beane, and we just hosted an hour-long presser with Terry Pegula and Brandon Beane discussing essentially the Sean McDermott move to fire him, our search of a new head coach, and a bunch of other random stuff that I want to talk about here on the show. Because for some reason, in about a week's time, we became the most dramatic franchise in the NFL. For some reason, Terry Pegula, who appeared out of nowhere for most people, with Brandon Beane, went on stage, and it felt like Brandon Beane was at Thanksgiving dinner trying to tame his senile uncle, his old uncle who had just completely lost it. Pegula, on multiple occasions during this press conference, just went off about things that nobody knew about and about things that it didn't seem like they had even discussed between him and Brandon Beane going into it. Like, it did not feel like they had a plan going into this press conference on how to address some of the critical questions that we all knew would be asked. And now we just look like idiots. Now, I don't even think Brandon Beane did too bad of a job answering the questions today. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through the entire 1 hour press conference. I've chopped up about 5.5 minutes of the most important clips and parts that you need to hear from the press conference. And I'm just going to react for you. I'm going to tell you exactly how I feel. I'm a Bills fan. I'm still devastated we lost to the Broncos, but I keep things real. And I'm not going to sit here and bullshit and sugarcoat things for you because I'm pissed too. It's been a decade of this, essentially, and I want change. So welcome back. It's JV Show. We're going to go through the clips of the press conference. I did my best not to rearrange things and try to get clips for clicks. That's not what this is. Everything's in chronological order, and we're going to go through, let's say, a dozen of the most important parts of this press conference for you to get a full picture idea of how ridiculous some of this was and where the direction of this franchise is going. So, without further ado, we're going to kick things off. I will play you the first clip, and then we will discuss. Let's listen in.
I want to take you in the locker room after that game. I walked over to Josh. He didn't even acknowledge I was there. First thing I said to him, I said, "That was a catch." He didn't acknowledge me.
So, Terry says, after the game, he walks in the locker room, goes up to Josh, and the first thing he says to him is, "That was a catch." Already, we're playing the victim card for shit that doesn't matter anymore. The game's over. Josh Allen is clearly devastated, crying, another terrible loss in the playoffs, and our owner is out here spewing shit about a controversial call. Listen, you all know my stance on the refs. Whether or not it was a call, whether or not it was an interception, it is what it is. The reality is that it was very, very close to either being a catch or an interception, and there were missed calls previously on that drive. We should have had a holding call in the red zone, which would have ended the game with the safety. Okay? Then he's like, "Well, Josh didn't acknowledge me." Well, no shit. What do you think Josh Allen wants to hear after a game like that? How about, "Hey, man, thank you so much for everything you did for us. We believe in you. We stand by you. We support you. You played great. You fought your ass off out there. Whatever happens, you're our guy. We believe in you. Thank you so much." Not, "That was a catch." And I understand it's a situation where emotions are high. You just finished the game. You don't really know how to react. But again, this kicked off the interview. Imagine that. Within the first minute and a half of the interview, we're already playing the victim card. It's like, hey, how about all the turnovers that we gave up during the game? How about all the missed opportunities? And we'll get into that as we progress through these clips of the press conference. But this was pretty much the first introduction of Terry Pegula. And it was like, all right, hold on. Whoa. Like, it was a catch. He didn't acknowledge me. Like, come on. What do you think he was going to say? Absolutely nothing, right? And this really set the foundation for me as I started listening to this press conference. And at that point, I was just heated. And for the rest 50 minutes, I was losing it, to be honest with you. So we're going to move on here to the next clip from the interview. Let's listen in.
Does anyone know what the numbers 523, 2226 represent? That's our seeding over the last 7 years in the playoffs. 5, 2, 3, 2, 2, 2, 6. An organization doesn't carry that kind of record without being a great organization and without having great players.
So, once again, Terry's back at it. First 5 minutes of the interview. He says, what do the numbers 5, 2, 3, 2, 2, 2, 2, 6 represent? Terry, we are 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 in winning and appearing in Super Bowls. I don't give a shit about our seeding. I don't care that we were 5, 2, 3, 2, 2, 2, 6. 2, 2, 2, 2, 6, whatever the hell the number is. I don't give a shit. Okay? If we're going to live off these seeding numbers, if we're going to live off making the divisional round, the conference championship, that's great. For sure. You need a good organization. You need a good coaching staff. You need good players to win in the NFL. It is a very hard league. It is very difficult to win in the playoffs. I completely understand. But with that being said, I don't care. The media doesn't care. The fans don't care. We know what our seeding has looked like for the last 7 years under Sean McDermott. We know what this team has been under Josh Allen. We know. We know that we've been a division champ for multiple years in a row. We know we've had chance after chance after chance in the playoffs. That's not what we're concerned about. And he opens this interview up just trying to cover his ass. It's like, hey, look at us. Ho, 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 ho. 5, 2, 3, 2, 2. Who cares? Who cares, honestly? I was just appalled. And honestly, this is a guy that hasn't really spoken to the media very much. He's not really present in press conferences at all. And for him to open up like this, it's like, hey, buddy, I need you to understand something. Whatever you think is working here, it clearly isn't, okay? And I appreciate that we've had success from a fan standpoint. I love watching us in the playoffs. I do not love watching us lose in the playoffs. And it's embarrassing that we're bragging about these seeding numbers as if they're relevant whatsoever. Who remembers who the 3rd seed was in 2021? Who remembers who the 5th seed was in 2016? Absolutely nobody. If you win, you win. If you don't, we have issues. And this really rubbed me the wrong way. I felt like he was coming out and trying to cover his ass and really like showboat and be like, oh, like, look at what we've done. We've been so successful. It's actually embarrassing. That is an embarrassment on this organization that we've had those seeding places, that we've had the greatest point differential in the league by a long shot over the past how many years. We've been, whatever, the number 1 record team, the number 1 point scorer team, whatever the numbers are, and we can't win shit. That's embarrassing. And to me, again, this was just, oh my goodness, the beginning of the end of his press conference. I couldn't believe it, to be honest with you. Let's listen in on the next clip.
I did not fire a coach based on a bad officiating decision. I felt like we hit the proverbial playoff wall.
Okay, so Terry Pegula says we hit the proverbial playoff wall with Sean McDermott. I agree with this statement, and here is why. For almost a decade, we played with Josh Allen, a top 5 quarterback in the league, and we had so many opportunities to capitalize in the playoffs. This year, this playoff picture, you don't want to necessarily blame McDermott for everything. 100%, I agree. Doesn't deserve all the blame. He's not the reason that we lost against the Denver Broncos, at least not the primary reason, and we'll talk about that. But the reality is, for almost a decade, we've been oh so close, but we cannot finish the job. And from a fan's perspective, that means you've hit a wall. You've maxed out. You've hit your peak. And in order to go farther, in order to push further in this playoff race, to get to a Super Bowl, to win a Super Bowl, we got to make a change. Now, for some reason, after McDermott was fired, all the fans came out of hibernation who loved McDermott And they were like, oh my God, look at our poor head coach. Look at the relationship he built. Look at the culture. All the players loved him. Yada, yada, yada. Okay, sure. Okay, McDermott's a good head coach in the league. He's going to go find success elsewhere. Maybe he'll win elsewhere. Who knows? I am wishing the best for him. But what about all the fans who, after the 13-second collapse against the Chiefs, were calling for his job? What about all the fans for the past 3 to 4 years prior to this playoff run were saying Sean McDermott is the main issue here? What about the fact that McDermott's defenses, even when they've been literally ranked as the number one unit heading into the playoffs, have completely folded, and they consistently allow well over 30 points per game in the playoffs? Like, that's the problem. That's what I don't understand. So, yes, it was a terrible start to the press conference, but this was something I absolutely agreed with. You have to. You have to. You have to detach yourself from the emotional standpoint of like, yeah, McDermott was a great head coach. He built all these relationships. He built us back up as a franchise. 100% yes. I agree. I am on board with that. But guess what? I don't really care about the emotional aspect of the sport right now. As a Bills fan, the majority of us want to see success. And for us, that means a Super Bowl win. And we just haven't got that. And that's what the playoff wall means. When Terry says that, that's what he means. And that's why the decision was made. That's why we were in search of a new head coach. Now, with that being said, should this decision have been made a few years ago, a year or two ago, we would probably be in a better situation right now. That's probably when it should have been made. But that comes up later on in the clips, so I'll save that for now. Let's go on to the next clip and hear what more Terry's got to say. Let's go.
How far before the playoff game had you maybe started thinking about this being a possibility?
After the playoff game, in the locker room, it was feeling the moment, being there.
So this is where the confusion comes in now, right? So Terry makes a good statement about McDermott and provides some reasoning as to why we moved on from him as our head coach. And then he says, I gave it no thought, absolutely no thought, did not think about it, did not take it into account until after the playoff game. You had to be there. You had to experience the emotions. That's horseshit. That's complete bullshit. And if that's true, it looks really bad on Terry Pegula. When the Ravens had their press conference after firing John Harbaugh, they were asked, what if Tyler Loop hits the kick? How long is Harbaugh still in Baltimore? And they said, 1 more week. Because their decision was already made. This is a decision that was built up, like I said, 4 years now. This is a decision that probably should have been made a few years ago when we continued to lose to the Chiefs in the playoffs because we clearly needed a change. And we had an MVP quarterback. But we didn't. And when I hear things like this, that makes it seem like an impulse decision to fire Sean McDermott. That's not what it was. Not at all. This was based off a decade's worth of, sure, some success, but now, again, it is Super Bowl or bust for our franchise. And that's something a lot of people have not grasped, I guess, yet. It is Super Bowl or bust. And that is the reason we moved on from McDermott. So this little clip, right after talking about McDermott and why he was fired and moved on from, did not make any sense to me. Because it's like, no, you should have taken this into account early on. This should have been on your mind. It should have been, hey, if we don't reach these milestones, yes, like we are moving on. This should have been a decision made years ago. But now we waited to the last minute. And ironically, when McDermott coaches a good game and has a good playoff run, a decent playoff run, we're firing him and it looks even worse than it should. Okay? Did not agree with it at all. Next clip.
The wide receiver position has been an issue with this team. And a lot of people out there believe you have failed in the free agent market. And then obviously with the Keon Coleman signing, which hasn't worked out. How do you answer the fact that you have not given Josh a good enough wide receiver room thus far?
Yeah, I mean,
Can I interrupt? I'll address the Keon situation. The coaching staff pushed to draft Keon. I'm not saying Brandon wouldn't have drafted him, but he wasn't his next choice. That was Brandon being a team player and taking advice of his coaching staff, who felt strongly about the player. And, he's taken, for some reason, heat over it and not saying a word about it, but I'm here to tell you the true story.
What the fuck? What does that even mean? What are we talking about right now? The reason Brandon Beane gets heat is because he's drafted 2 Pro Bowlers since drafting Josh Allen. That's it. I believe that's the statistic. Literally only 2 Pro Bowlers. The Pro Bowl had Snoop Huntley there a few years ago. Please. So you mean to tell me Sean McDermott was the guy who was fully on board drafting Keon Coleman and Brandon Beane was just a yes man? Yeah, I'm not buying it. You know why I don't buy it? Because Brandon Beane, in around 20 minutes after that was stated, says, I believe in Keon Coleman, and that was my pick. They did not rehearse any of this. They had no clue what was going on, and we look like a shit show, and Keon Coleman is still on the team. What are we doing? Honestly, Keon Coleman has been a bust up to this point. He cannot separate. He's not a deep threat, not great intermediate, not a great route runner. Contested catching hasn't even been flashy. I don't understand. We clearly did not assess him properly and brought him in to be this guy that he's not. Cool. I am fine if we own up to our mistakes and Brandon Beane says we made a mistake. And Terry says, yeah, we made a mistake drafting. It happens to everybody. Cool. Why is Brandon Beane getting all this heat? Terry questions. I don't understand why he's getting all this heat from the public, from the fan base. Because we do not draft stars. We don't. We just expect to get by with mediocrity, and that's what pisses the fan base off, Terry. That's what pisses us off. So, Brandon Beane, we'll see it in the clips. He has to go out, do damage control. He says, I still believe in him. It's been a maturity thing, yada, yada, yada. They contradict themselves. There's a lot of confusion now. This is what I mean. It's like, if you're going to fire Sean McDermott, which I completely agreed with, it was the right decision at the end of the day. You have to come out well-rehearsed, sharp as a fucking tack if you're going to answer some of these questions. Because now it's like, well, what's going on? How much dysfunction has been in this organization? Have we been this dysfunctional all along and it's just been hidden? I don't understand, right? And then there's the clips coming out of Brandon Beane in the war room or whatever saying, oh, thank God Keon Coleman ran a 4.57 because we want to get him. It's like, what's the real story? Terry, again, is playing the victim card. Oh, not my fault. Not my fault. Sean's fault, right? Well, blame it all on Sean. Look at this shitter who drafted Keon Coleman, right? Again, it just didn't make sense to me. It doesn't give off a good vibe. And a lot of the press conference was this. It was just like, again, for me, like mistake after mistake after mistake. Why do we keep blaming these people? Why don't we take ownership? We messed up. Keon Coleman wasn't a good draft pick for us. Probably not going to be on the team after this. I wouldn't want to be on the team after this. After Pegula goes ham on me. After Brandon Beane trying to do damage control because clearly he probably feels the same way. It's like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Next clip.
When you're paying Josh what you're paying him now versus what you were paying him in 2020, 2021, 2022, you got to make some sacrifices. And where we pick, we're not picking at the top, okay? When you say free agency, like, I'm not sure what players that we could have acquired, that I've got to be able to afford them, okay? So you're making selections. The number one thing I always want to do with Josh Allen is protect him, okay? We've had an O-line that's gotten better and better that also helped us have a leading rusher this year.
Brandon Beane, solid answer. Very solid answer. So I'm trying not to cut these clips out of context. Essentially, they're talking about the roster construction here, obviously. Yes, we've had issues at receiver. My issue is, like, there are other quarterbacks in the league that are paid a lot of money and still have receiver help, okay? The Eagles have a masterclass of a front office. They do well drafting. They do well supporting their quarterback. They're paying Jalen Hurts a lot of money, yet they have star receivers around them, a good defense, right? That's always the example I look at, okay? So just because we are paying Josh Allen doesn't mean we can't give him weapons offensively in the receiver room. I just think that's a lie. I don't believe it. Yes, we need to make sacrifices, absolutely. You need to take some pay cuts. Maybe you can't sign absolutely everybody, but getting at least a solid, true number one receiver is important because a lot of successful teams in the NFL right now have that. But with that being said, the back half of the answer was great. And it's the truth. For Brandon Beane, it's all about been protecting Josh Allen. And that's what he's done. And it has helped us in the run department. And we've had the number one offensive line for a few years now. And we've been really solid up front. And that is where you win games, in the trenches. So that's been great. I thought it was a great answer. I thought it was very reasonable of him to come out and say that. And he stands on it. That's exactly what he's done. All right, he's drafted. He's made moves. He's built up the offensive line year after year. Now we had James Cook as the leading rusher for this season. We were the best rushing team in the regular season. And Josh Allen, for the most part, was protected. And it gives him time in the pocket. It allows him to move around, do his superhero things. We know all about that. So I really like this from Brandon Beane, especially the back half of that answer. But with that being said, I do want us to get somebody in the receiver room that we can trust, we can rely on when we need it in the playoffs. It's not really the regular season. And hey, look, we put up probably an average of 30 to 32 points per game every single playoff game. I'm not really sure what the numbers are, but it's got to be somewhere close there. Maybe a little lower, 27, whatever it is, right? We can put up points, but it's in the clutch moments when you need a guy to go up there and make a grab. Who's going to be the guy, right? Like the Brandon Cooks catch. And this is nothing against Brandon Cooks. Maybe he made the catch, whatever it is, right? We're not going to get into that. But in clutch moments like that, you want to have somebody you can rely on to go up there, make a 50-50 grab, move the chains, kick a field goal, game over, right? And I love Brandon Cooks. Again, no hate to him. Maybe that was a catch. I would bring him back. Great piece to our team this year. I'm just saying that would be awesome to have on our roster for a close playoff game. All right? Next clip.
Brandon, at the trade deadline, you said that you felt the team had a championship roster. What, in your mind, led to the group falling short of that?
I mean, Jay,
A bad call.
we went to Jacksonville and we won, a good team. And then we went to Denver, who was the 1 seed, and we obviously had turnovers in the game, but I would say we had every chance to win that game. And as I said earlier, not be playing here. So we didn't get it done, but it doesn't mean that we didn't have the opportunity or have a team that could have gotten it done.
Terry Pegula has lost his mind. Do you see what I mean? Right? They ask a question to Brandon Beane about the roster construction and at the trade deadline saying we have enough to go all the way. Okay, once again, he is playing the victim card and blaming the officiating for a game that is completely on our players. And our players only. And that's it. And on the 5 turnovers during the game. And on the missed opportunities. During a screen pass. Missing Dawson Knox. Or Kincaid, whoever it was, for the touchdown. All of these. The multiple DPI calls. On the final drive to set up Bo Nix and the Broncos. In field goal range to win the game. That is on us. Pegula, who has not spoken to the media in a very long time, comes out, and all he is negative and blaming the refs, and it's not our fault, and we did everything perfectly. Meanwhile, Brandon Beane, level-headed take, very good job again, I applaud him, says we did not lose the game because we lacked something. We did not lose the game because we didn't have the roster. We had opportunities. Just like Brandon Beane said, we had the chances to make the plays, to win the game, and we just didn't capitalize. That's what it is at the end of the day. From a fan's perspective, okay, and I'm getting really close to the heart here. From my perspective, all I want to hear, transparency and accountability. Be honest, be accountable. We lost the game because we turned over the ball 5 times and we did not capitalize when the opportunities were there. That's all it is, okay? It has nothing to do with coaching here, really. Sure, you can nitpick and say, oh, this play, sure. Maybe the refs made a bad call here. But at the end of the day, the reason we lost the game We take a look in the mirror and you'll find it, right? So Brandon Beane comes out again doing damage control. Terry Pegula is a huge problem, clearly. Clearly, we're not being managed properly. Clearly, our organization is in shambles because right from the top, we're a joke. We're a joke. There's no accountability here. And again, we're playing the victim card. We're blaming. It's not our fault because of a bad call. No, Terry, that's not what it is, okay? And all realistic Bills fans, even if you're biased, will tell you that's not the problem, okay? We had 5 turnovers in the game. We had so many self-inflicted wounds. I can't even count them on my own fingers, my own toes, okay? That is why we lost the game. And it's comments like these that really piss me off, and they make us look like a sorry-ass franchise.
You've emphasized how important Josh is to this franchise and how seeing him after the game was a factor. What input did he have, if any, on this decision to fire Sean, or what conversations have you had with Josh Allen?
He didn't have any input at all. I didn't talk to Josh about this.
Yeah, so I don't really know how to feel about this one because the McDermott decision was going to happen eventually, right? Whether or not Josh was on board with it. But again, it's the whole idea of you're answering questions to the media right now, and really it's probably shocking to a lot of people and to myself as well that you don't sit down Josh and talk to him, even just brief him on the fact that you're going to fire the head coach that he's worked with since he got to Buffalo, right? Like, that's probably just a good idea. That's just something courteous to do, right? And again, I just think it's a miss on behalf of our front office here and our organization. And like, we have an MVP QB. We have somebody that we don't want to piss off and we love very dearly here in Buffalo. And we want to take care of him. And whatever we got to do to include him in big decisions like this, I would do it. So I was just kind of appalled, you know? And yes, the decision had to be made, but it's like the guy that it's probably affecting the most is going to be Josh Allen. Like, who else on this roster player-wise does this affect more than Josh Allen? I would probably say nobody, right? So to not include him, the head of our franchise, the guy that literally helps us into the playoffs every single year, it's a mistake, I think. I really think it's a mistake. And again, I do not like the answer from Terry Pegula. I think it's just like another huge blunder from him. Old Gramps, big unk out here, doesn't understand. Next clip.
When you make a coaching decision, I think there might be a sentiment that they must have somebody in mind. That is why they are moving on. I understand you were going through a search, but is there a front runner? Is there somebody you are targeting, or is this completely an open search, no decisions made yet?
It's 100% an open search.
All right, so this is a great question, I think, for Brandon Beane, because when you do, like the reporter said, fire a head coach who's been there for so long, who's done a really good job, for around a decade, we've had a lot of success playoff-wise. Like, we made the playoffs, sure. I know we haven't made the Super Bowl, but we've had winning seasons, and there's been life in the playoffs, which is great. But when you do fire a head coach like that, and you still have the roster to do it, and you're coming off a season where you could have made the Super Bowl and we should have won, and you have an MVP QB, you want there to be some kind of plan in place. And this is what kind of concerns me about the timing of the Sean McDermott fire. This decision, in my opinion, should have been made years ago. And now we have missed out on multiple years where available head coaches, that market was phenomenal. Mike Vrabel, Liam Cohen, Ben Johnson, all of those guys last year joined new teams, had extremely successful seasons. All 3 of them made the playoffs. We fire Sean McDermott, and I don't really love the market. I do not want to promote internally. That almost never works. And if we want something brand new, if we want a new, fresh idea, a new mind, a new culture, we got to go elsewhere. So scrap the internal promotion, throw that to the side. I also don't want a year 1 head coach that we're just betting on. Now, Ben Johnson, I don't think you're betting on a year one head coach there. Pretty obvious he knows what he's doing. Great offensive play caller, came from the Dan Campbell tree. It was a slam dunk he was going to do good. Let's be honest. Okay, he just knows what he's doing. I don't want to be going after these random receiver coaches or QB coaches. That's fine. I'd love to give him an opportunity. Sure, that's sweet. I'm kind of past the whole emotional thing now. The waiting, we have time. We'll give him another year or two. It's his first year head coaching. No. I want a guy who has done it before, who's been a head coach, who's had some success, to come in, who knows what he's doing, set the standard, set the culture, win us a Super Bowl. Immediately. That's what we want. Okay? I want a Belichick to come in. A hard ass. Somebody who's going to be hard on our players, who's going to shake things up, and he's going to change everything that we know about Buffalo football. We are not going to be losers in the playoffs anymore. We are going to be winners. But we cannot do that, in my opinion, with some random receiver coach or some DB coach. And personally, I don't really love the market right now. And after this press conference, I think we are not as desirable as maybe we thought we were before. Maybe the Ravens are a better option. Like, we're still a good landing spot because we have Josh Allen. But again, like, it kind of concerns you. You get a little panicked when you know that we don't really have a plan and we have this 100% open mindset. We got to make the right decision here, obviously. Because how many more prime years of Josh we got? I don't know. Quite a few, but like, it's going to expire at some point. And if we expire that time without a Super Bowl, I will be crushed. This fan base will be crushed.
Is it Super Bowl or bust? Because in 2026,
No. We can't say that to somebody coming in. We're making a change, and it's do your best job.
So this answer is, I've been media trained. I'm not going to say it's a Super Bowl year. It's not Super Bowl or bust. Let me tell you something, Terry. The entire fan base views every season as Super Bowl or bust now. The entire fan base. Nobody on planet Earth that is in support of the Buffalo Bills views any season like a success if we do not make and win the Super Bowl. It's just what it is, right? So, sure, you don't want to put all this pressure on the new head coach coming in, and that's fine. That's realistic. You want to give him room for improvement. You also want to give him room to make mistakes and to grow. That's fine, right? But the reality is, ladies and gentlemen, it is Super Bowl or bust, Terry. And the fan base knows it, and the players know it. The coaching staff knows it. Players know it. Fan base knows it. Everybody knows it's Super Bowl or bust now. Right? And that's why I want an experienced head coach, somebody who's done it before. They don't have to be a Super Bowl champion. It would be nice, Bill. But, again, to have all this pressure on you and to be a first-time head coach, I don't like it. I just don't like it. Doesn't sound good to me.
I understand your desire to keep that private, but is the starting quarterback on board with this decision?
The starting quarterback will be part of the team to help select a new coach. He's going to be working with us, and anything else, his feelings, I want to keep that private. I don't want this in Josh's head. This was my decision.
I like it. I like the answer. So, obviously, this is relating to the Sean McDermott decision. And, again, I appreciate that at this point, Terry has had a very bad press conference, but he at least protects Josh Allen, right? I'm not sure how Josh felt about firing Sean McDermott. Probably wasn't a huge fan of it. Again, he's been a great head coach for this team. He's built good relationships. I'm sure he had a great relationship with Josh Allen, and they believed in him, right? But eventually the business decisions have to come in, right? So I appreciate that at this point we protected Josh just a little bit, and we didn't toss him out to the wolves, and there wasn't unnecessary drama or beef. Again, just a media-trained answer. And that's what this was, and I appreciated it. Although there were so many screw-ups prior to this, this was a solid answer. So I liked it from Terry. Let's listen into this last clip before we wrap things up.
How do you move forward with Keon Coleman at this point? You know, already the headlines and the shows are he wasn't your pick. That's what's being said now.
No, he was my pick. I made the pick. Terry's point was that we might have had it in a different order of personnel versus coaching, and I went that way. But ultimately, I'm not turning a pick for a player that I don't think we can succeed with. So don't misunderstand that. Keon Coleman is a young player that has been here 2 years, has 2 years left on his deal. It's up to us to continue to work with him and develop him. It's not his issues have not been on the field. They've just been maturity things that he owns. I give him credit. He owns. He doesn't make excuses, which I appreciate, but we still believe in Keon Coleman here, and it's up to us to develop his talent so that he can help us win games.
And here is the final disconnect from Brandon Beane and Terry Pegula. Terry Pegula says it was not Brandon Beane who drafted him. Essentially, they did not want him, and it was on Sean McDermott. What Brandon Beane wanted to say just now was Terry is a complete idiot. And he told you something either you weren't supposed to know or that was fake just to cover his ass because he fired Sean McDermott, kept Brandon Beane and promoted him, and Terry wants to look good. Naturally. It just is what it is. So again, there is this confusion now. Which one is it? Do we want Keon Coleman? Do we not? Well, you already kind of threw him under the bus here. He's been a bust for us, to be honest with you. He has not been great. He dropped an insane pass in the red zone. I know there was a flag, but against the Broncos, that did not help his case. Now, I know he caught a touchdown, but again, it was a failure of a pick up to this point. And I find it hard to believe Keon Coleman is going to have a better attitude now that he knows what our front office really thinks about him, and it has been publicized. I just have a hard time believing it. I'm sorry. You know, if I heard that about myself and I was working hard for an organization, I don't know how I'd feel. So we've probably burned that bridge, and that is fine because I wasn't a huge fan of Keon Coleman. After he was scratched multiple times this year, I said, get lost. We can win without you. We absolutely could. And that game was not because Keon Coleman was great or was bad. It didn't matter. Okay, we literally only needed him in the lineup because we had 3 receivers healthy. It is what it is, okay? But if we did not have him, it's the same outcome, okay? We lose because we turn over the ball. If we don't turn over the ball, we win. You know what I mean? It's just a bad look, and it doesn't look well rehearsed, and it doesn't look like they've had a discussion about it. And Brandon Beane's just like, well, listen. Listen. Old Uncle Terry over here told you something that's kind of dumb. So let me tell you, I believe in Keon Coleman. Patch it up a little bit. Try and do some work to resolve the issue that's now been created. Anyways, that's my thoughts on the press conference. Those are the most important clips you got to know. In my opinion, this made us look worse than we did prior to the press conference, although I do think there were some good parts, some good answers. A few by Brandon Beane, maybe one by Terry. We better not screw this head coach thing up because we're at a spot right now where we can win. We need a head coach. Do not mess the job up. Get a vet. Get somebody that knows what he's doing. Let's seal the deal. Go Bills. Bills Mafia for life. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.